On this video, I want to talk about how our brain learns and why that's important. We often want our brain to do things that it's actually incapable of doing. I was chatting with a lady recently who said that she just wants to know when the self-doubt and fear will not be with her anymore. And I said death, which sounds blunt, but we have self-doubt and fear ingrained into us. It's hardwired into our brains. So we're never going to not feel that feeling. It's for safety. So, and you look at movie stars and the like, people we admire at times and think that they're not feeling fear, but it's just that they've handled that fear to a point where they can take actions far beyond what a lot of us could consider ourselves doing. So it's how we handle those fears along the way, along the journey. And just because you don't see those successful people feeling or showing the fear or self-doubt, it's not that they're not experiencing them. It's just that they've conquered them and put themselves in situations where a lot of us wouldn't put ourselves. We don't know what's going on behind the curtain. If you see a public speaker, you think they're not experiencing fear. You say that they don't have a fear of public speaking, but that's not true. So there's a saying, don't ever compare your first rehearsal to a professional's opening night. And there's a great analogy when it comes to looking at how we learn. If you just snip the weeds at the top, the roots are still in the ground. You need to pull them out from the roots if you want to get to the core of things. We need to understand that a seed has been planted a long time ago, and that little plant's come up with fear and doubts from a long, long time ago. So below the surface are things like our experiences, our beliefs, our values, drivers, attitudes, meta-programs, identities, and our core self. And what we want to focus on is actually the language. Language is the connector between the two. We have our internal language, what we're saying to ourselves, and we have an external language, the things that are coming out of our mouths. And it's really important to be conscious of those things that we're saying. So I want to talk about today deletions, distortions, and generalizations. We have 1,000 events happening around us at any given time, and we selectively pay attention to certain aspects of and experiences. We're literally bombarded with millions of bits of information every day, and most of which we have no use for. So we'd literally go crazy if we didn't ignore the things that we didn't need to focus on. So we delete, distort, and generalize everything that's coming into us through our senses. So our attention's limited and precious. If you think about trying to find a needle in a haystack and getting all that other hay, not needing it, or Googling a certain term, you're not going to go through everything in the internet, you're going to Google a term. So our psychological states directly influence what we sort for. So if we're hungry or thirsty, we'll sort through maps of the world and find the resources we want to get those things. That's why they say it's not good to go shopping when you're hungry. We have what's called a reticular activation system, or RAS for short, which does the filtering. And each person's unique neuroprogramming's made up of belief systems, values, and drivers, which dictates what the RAS allows into the conscious awareness and what it filters out. So distortions are a way of filtering our sensory information so that it fits in with what we expect or believe. And we all have the ability to misrepresent our sensory experience to find exactly what we're looking for 100% of the time. We place our own interpretations and meanings onto events to match our internal collection of stories. If you think of a spider running across the floor, you have a heart skips a beat because you think you see a spider going across the floor, and then when you realise it's just a bit of fluff being blown by the wind, you have a totally different perception on that thing. So that's an example of that. Generalisation is a brilliant process that allows us to categorise the world in terms of how things are like or different from other things. If our brains did not generalise information, we'd have to make new decisions in every experience in life. So if you think of an example of seeing a chair around you, you see those arms and legs and the seat, you don't need to distinguish that that's a chair every time you see a different chair. We generalise and know that that's what that is. There's also a dark side to generalisation. When we generalise everything as positive, it's possible to accept poison with the potion. And when we generalise everything as negative, we miss out on great opportunities and we lack the ability to distinguish. So when you see the world through the eyes of a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We learn best when we remain flexible in our generalisations and update our categories as more experience is gained and finer distinctions are made, rather than holding tightly to that first impression. In my next video, I'll cover the 5 meaning filters, the sensory interactions we have with the external world as they pass through these 5 filters before we assign meaning to the experiences and in turn create our internal reality. Thanks for listening.